belief system to go with them. Let me tell you something. Daniel was taken to Babylon. He lost his civil rights. He lost his civil rights. They stripped him of his name. He couldn't be called Daniel. He was called Belteshazzar. And all the other Hebrew young people lost their names, and they were given Babylonian names. In a minute, Daniel became homeless. He became voiceless. He became powerless. He became faceless. And he became nameless. That's what they did with us when we were brought from the continent of Africa to the rest of the world. We were stripped of our names. The name that I have, WIP, W-I-P, means winner in power. But it's a name by a Swedish slave master who captured my foreparents and brought them all the way from the west coast of Africa to South America. And that's why I have the name, WIP. And I say it's a winning in power. Daniel was stripped of his human rights. Not only his civil rights, his human rights. Do you know that Daniel was castrated? He was physically castrated. He was sexually castrated so that he would be faithful to the king of Babylon. And he served all his life. It's never recorded that Daniel was married. It's not recorded that he had children because he was a eunuch. You know, when we were brought to the Americas, we were defined by law, to be 3/5 of a human being. 3/5 of a human being. So you got to understand, Daniel went through a whole lot. Daniel was stripped of his religious and cultural freedom. And he went through a process of cultural indoctrination. He had to start worshiping the gods of heaven. He had to participate in mandatory idol worship. And then there was a systematic indoctrination by the state and the religious establishment. And the whole thing was to erase everything from his Hebrew background, to regene him, to reprogram him, so that he would become a Babylonian and think like a Babylonian. This is what Carter B. Woodson said. When you control a man's thinking, you do not have to worry about his actions. What I tell young people is this: young people, save 1 penny every hour. If you save 1 penny an hour, that's 24 pennies a day. That's in a month, 30 times 24, 720 pennies. In a year, 8,640 pennies. You've saved it. A penny. Just start with a penny. It's a mindset. But if you control people's thinking, what happens? You take that $8,640 and now you can invest it. And you learn to make it work for you. Amen? So it's important that you remember that. Daniel had a totally different mindset from all the other captives. Because Daniel knew Jesus. His parents gave him a belief system in which Jesus was the center. Young people, Jesus sought you out. Remember that. Jesus sought you out. Remember, Jesus paid the price. Yes. Jesus purchased you. Yes. He purchased you with his life. Amen. And that you got to understand, he cleansed you with his blood. Amen. And he covered you with his white robe of righteousness. And he transformed you so that you're now his child and you're safe to serve him. Daniel understood that. So when Daniel was now a prisoner of war as a teenager, isolated, cut off from his support systems, Daniel was brought to a heathen country called Babylon. Now let me tell you what the Babylonians did. How did the heathen king of Babylon use the Hebrew captives? What did the king do? The king developed a political plan to use these captives. Number one, write it down. There's awareness, there's acknowledgement, and there's acceptance. The king of Babylon was aware of the fact that among the Hebrew population in Jerusalem, there were young people who were brilliant. They were artistic. They were talented. They were gifted. The king knew that. He acknowledged that, and he accepted that. And so what did he do? What did he do? He screened when he caught those prisoners of war. He screened them. He selected them, and he gave them specialized training to serve in his kingdom. He brought them with him all the way to Babylon. And then the next thing he did with them, he put them in charge. The king, what he did was he organized the whole kingdom of Babylon into provinces. And then he chose from the Babylonians, he chose 120 princes or 120 vice generals who ran those provinces. But above those provinces, above those leaders, there were 3 governors. They were over the 120 governors that were over the provinces. And the top leader among the 3 governors was Daniel. Daniel answered only to the king. How is it possible to be a prisoner of war and to overcome adversity and rise to the top? Tell me. How is it possible? It is possible to do that. We living now in a country in which there's going to be a constitutional crisis. The world in which you're graduating now is not standing there with open arms and saying, oh, we love you. You critical thinkers. You rise above the rest. No. There's a storm on the horizon right now. People may not talk about it. People would rather look the other way. You remember the Good Samaritan?